Hello and welcome to Multifamily Elevated. My name's Suzanne Hobson, and I am super excited to talk to you about vision, people, and execution, and how you can utilize this information to elevate you and your team and your experience in multifamily. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, giving you the latest and greatest news and content across our multifamily sector. So let's jump in. Enjoy this episode of Multifamily Elevated and enjoy the climb.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Elevated. I'm your host, Suzanne Hobson, and we are thrilled today to be able to have a really great chat with Jeremy Cohen. And I'm going to let him introduce himself so that you can learn more about who he is and what we're going to be talking about today. Jeremy?
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you. Jeremy Cohen, Director of Real Estate Partnerships here at SWTCH. It's really my role in the organization to work with developers and owners and operators of real estate to help them with their EV charging strategy. You know, no two portfolios are alike, no two buildings are alike. So I'm really there to help them navigate their whole EV charging journey.
And I can't wait to learn more about SWTCH. And this is a hot topic, right? Everybody's talking about how to really integrate this into our developments across the country. And so I think there'll be a lot of really great questions that many of our operators are wanting to ask who maybe haven't gotten into it yet or are in the midst of it. And so, are you ready to just jump right in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Great. All right. So I know that you just shared a little bit about your background, but what led you to SWTCH? How did you choose SWTCH?
Great question. I can confidently say I would have never thought I would be in the EV charging industry, but I had a mixed blend. I was in technology in my first life. I was selling hardware, software to the real estate industry as a whole. And then I went into the real estate industry, having worked in architecture and property management. And, you know, I was looking for my next journey and I was looking for prop tech because I was trying to figure out how to blend the two worlds together. And that seemed like the most viable way. And all of a sudden, SWTCH reached out to me out of the blue. Couldn't believe it. And they said, hey, listen, we're looking for someone who knows tech and knows real estate. And I said, wow. The angels must have been listening. So, here I am. I'm very fortunate doing what I love, just working with real estate, working with technology, and just kind of melding the two together.
That's awesome, Jeremy. And yes, there's so much going on with technology right now. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about impacts of AI. That's the hot thing. Let's dive into another question here. So what problem is SWTCH solving for in the multifamily space, and how did the company come to focus on this niche?
Yeah. So SWTCH was founded in 2016, and the ethos has always been around multifamily as a whole. I mean, it's how we got our start. Just so fortunate that we've just been a leader in this space for this long in it. And we're really just solving the needs of going into these buildings that weren't thinking about EV charging 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And how are we deploying chargers just given that these buildings are old, in a lot of retrofit environments where you have current building systems already in place. And now you're adding a new technology that could potentially strain the building and offering this amenity. So it's been really great to see SWTCH just staying in this space and also advancing it. By not having to do these enormous electrical upgrades and infrastructure upgrades, still being able to provide this amenity to the residents that want it, to the ownership groups that want it, that is flexible, affordable, scalable, and most importantly, just user-friendly. You just want it to work at the end of the day.
That's really true. And for this type of technology, it's so new. People don't even know necessarily where to begin. I know we talked about this when we were chatting before, just about like the Midwest versus the coast. And where I come from, there's, I think, a lot more unknown than perhaps the coasts are experiencing in terms of experience with this now. But they're popping up everywhere. So it is definitely a thing, and really something that developers, operators, current operators are really trying to figure out. And you mentioned a couple of things that I think are really fascinating. I know we're going to dig into that, in a little bit, But I'd like to talk about the charging and multifamily integration and how this has happened. So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're hearing from multifamily operators about really implementing these types of solutions?
Yeah, great question. It comes on multiple angles. So I would say if you're an operator who has assets across the whole country, you sometimes scratch your head and say, where do I even begin? This is so daunting. So market prioritization, I think, is absolutely vital. Analyzing the portfolio, seeing potentially which states might be more rich in EV charging maybe than others, and starting there. You're balancing demand. So maybe you already know at these given properties, there are a ton of EV drivers at this one. And, how many chargers should I install? It's way better to overshoot than to undershoot. In our business, we call it future proofing, because if you build it, they will come. And we have some great case stories around that too. There's just so many factors too. You just need to rely on someone to navigate this, because there is construction involved. There's permitting, monitoring, maintenance, you kind of name it. So when you rely on someone that's just been in the space for a bit, you as an owner and operator can sit pretty, don't do all the legwork. Let us do it. We have the data. We have the insights. We see where EV adoption is heading, which states are more bullish than others. And just to kind of look at it holistically of just saying, listen, let's start here. Rome wasn't built in a day, but the best part is you may see such enormous adoption where that's such a good problem to have. So you continue to scale. So, some of these states that might historically have been super bullish, to your point, Suzanne, don't count out the other ones, because there's a lot of interest going on.
Yeah, and that future fitting. How did you put that? What's the term?
Future proofing.
Future proofing. Oh, I love it. I hope we can now coin that. It's going to be like your thing. That's great. That's awesome. And you're right. I think now with technology, companies are having to think this way. What will this look like? And are we building it so that we can continue to develop it? It's very, very interesting. So how does Switch technology differentiate itself from other EV charging solutions in the market? So how do you differentiate yourself?
Oh, so many factors. Where to begin? So at our core, we are a software company. We are a network. We make sure that these chargers are up and running, providing software for ownership groups and as well as for the residents and tenants and the drivers themselves. We are brand agnostic on the hardware offering. So we don't manufacture the hardware. We partner with a multitude of different hardware providers that we like, know, trust, and are most importantly tested. Because at the end of the day, we're going to provide a solution to a building and it's going to say Switch on it. It's not going to necessarily say the hardware manufacturer. So we need to make sure that we're providing good hardware as well. With that said, on the hardware front, everything that we provide is what's called OCPP, and it stands for Open Charge Point Protocol. And essentially what that means is if you're an owner and operator and you purchase the hardware, you're not locked in to using Switch for the long haul. If you're not happy with us as a network, you can easily move to a different network provider, just like your phone. You have your iPhone, you've been with AT&T for 10 years, all of a sudden you want to go to Verizon. You don't necessarily need to buy a new phone to do that. You can just move to a different network. And that's how we've positioned ourselves. We put the client first, because at the end of the day, it's our job to service both the client and the owners and operators who we serve. That is one big factor. The second of what we're doing is just really taking energy management to a whole new level. So as we alluded to earlier, we're going into existing building stock that might be energy constrained, that we're thinking about chargers, and we're still deploying chargers. These chargers are smart. The software is smart. They are speaking to one another, throttling the energy up and down over the course of the day, over the night, over what's going on at the actual building. The building is already using energy. It's using washers, dryers, faucets are running, lights are on, and then you add the chargers into the mix. So these chargers are speaking to each other. The software is speaking to each other. We have advanced load management capabilities with a product that we have called Switch Control, which is a panel metering device, which again is just taking energy management up a whole new level and monitoring everything at the building level. And then just our suite of services. I mean, Switch Cortex is everything that we do. Between everything that I stated, we go into garages where historically don't have great Wi-Fi and cell signal, and we ultimately blanket the garage with Wi-Fi that feeds the chargers just to ensure optimal uptime. And even on that, we've released Switch Nexus, which is a microcomputer that lives at the building to, again, ensure uptime in the event that the power goes out, that the chargers can still work. And there's so many things that we do on a software level, between building integrations, property management software integrations, parking management integrations, because I think when you speak to the average renter, there's app fatigue. There's app fatigue as a renter and user, but also for, owners and operators and community managers and property managers on the ground. So we just kind of want to streamline that and make it just very easy for people to use. I joke. Sometimes I say we don't have an ego. You don't even need to know that we exist in a building, because we've already integrated and just made life simple. And that's just how it should be. Again, you just want the chargers to work, and you don't want everyone just having to worry about this additional amenity that may potentially, cause you more strain than it really might need to.
Right. And you brought up a really good point, Jeremy, about an extra amenity. That just perked me up right there, because this is a really great selling opportunity and marketing opportunity for operators. Before we jump there, though, I do want to talk to you a little bit further about integration with our property management software. Can you go into that a little bit deeper? Because that's, again, another big pain point in multifamily, right? Just like you said, too many apps, too much technology. And the more integration we can have, the better. Can you tell me about how you've integrated with some of our big ones?
Yeah, no, it's great. I would probably bucket that into two different sectors. I'll call that the administrative sector, and then the accounting, sector. So, from an administrative standpoint, you have operators who are using so many different property management systems. I know there's a consolidation right now, and we want to live within the tech stack also. So here we are integrating into other smart platforms. And why that's great is because at the end of the day, since we are a software and these chargers are producing revenue, it's our job to collect that revenue and remit it back to ownership, because it's their revenue, it's their electricity. So by integrating naturally, you can think of us as another accounting system on the back end that is collecting this revenue and streamlining it, for their operations there. You can also look at it from the users. The users use these property management systems day to day, whether they want to book amenity spaces, whether they want to pay their rent on it, so on and so forth. So now, living in the ecosystem for the actual resident, they can then reserve a parking spot or reserve a spot that has an EV charger. When they go to use that spot, they can pay for the usage via that already property management system application. When you go into a smart parking application, there's so many smart parking operators already working within a building. So now it's pretty much touchless. The resident has gone through the garage, the gate has lifted, they plugged in their charger, and it was frictionless. They didn't even need to download another app. By the time they left the garage, they've already got billed for it, and then ownership will just collect the revenue. So by integrating into these smart parking applications, property management systems, it's just an ease of use at the end of the day.
Yes. Oh, thank you for answering that question, because, again, I think that's a hot one. Have you noticed any difference with product types and your ability to be able to, really integrate seamlessly, or that with that frictionless customer experience? Does it matter if you're garden style or if you're high rise, city, country? Any kind of thoughts on that?
No, I like that question. I love all asset types. I just love them. So no, and that's the beauty of it. Again, it should be frictionless. It should be seamless. As long as these systems have, open standards and APIs that, Switch can talk to with the respective company. No, there's nothing too big, too small. We'll always help, on an integration standpoint. We'll always train on an integration standpoint. We want to make sure that, once the system's implemented, that the operators just know how to use it. And we're monitoring things on the back end, right? Like we'll pick up if things aren't working seamlessly, or we've encountered any glitches, which I think as an owner and operator appreciate, because again, we're part of the team, you know?
Well, and that partnership that you speak about, I know is really important. We just recently were at NAA and Apartmentalize, and there was a lot of chit chat about support from our partners. And to hear that, I think is really critical. What does the support mechanism look like? Like, let's say, we sign up and we're ready to go. What does that look like from, those beginning times together and then implementation or launch?
Yeah, I joke. I say it takes a village just to get one EV charger in the ground. So it is truly a partnership between, working with a CPO, a charge point operator like Switch, who's providing hardware and software. It's working with a qualified electrician who knows how to install the chargers properly, who has been vetted and has done previous installation work. Not all electricians are created equal, and not all want to install EV chargers. Working with building management to make sure that we know the exact spots that we want to install at, the electrical capacity. Do we need to bring in new equipment? Do we not need to bring in new equipment? And then working with ownership to also set the desired rates, access policies, who can charge, who can't charge, enforce loitering and reservation systems. Sometimes we're working with the utility companies if there's incentives or rebates available in a given area. We're working with those folks too. So, you want a partner who's going to manage it all, but just know behind, the curtain, there's a lot of ducks paddling, in the same direction. And, even after the chargers have been installed, they're up and running, they look beautiful, and it's still working, you still want to know that you're still supported. So that's where 24/7, 365 monitoring comes in. That's where, additional O&M packages, may be beneficial just to ensure optimal uptime. Just knowing that you have someone to call because they might go down, So, and you just want to know that you place the call, they'll be up and running and fixed, whether that be remote diagnostics or someone on site coming. So it absolutely takes a village. And I just joke, it's a glorified electrical outlet at the end of the day. That just takes so many people to make sure it works well and it's implemented right.
If it were only that simple, right? It's just like plugging it in. Well, and you make it look that way, which is the whole thing that we're talking about. That support, again, I think is really important. You mentioned training too. I know that came up in several conversations that I was a part of, and sometimes it's not sufficient. And it sounds like you have a really comprehensive training with new teams to really make sure that it gets implemented and integrated properly.
Yeah, absolutely. We take the training very seriously. Our onboarding team does an incredible job after these chargers have been put in the ground, where they're taking the time to meet with ownership to make sure that these are set up the way that they want to, that they're seeing all the data that they need or want for reporting purposes. And just know that it's fluid, like nothing's set in stone. We may set up a charger and configure it one way. And then ownership may call us in a month and say, hey, you know what? These chargers are killing it. So let's change up the access policies or configurations, absolutely. And we provide wonderful tutorial videos, YouTube videos, where people don't necessarily need to sit on the phone with us and go through the nuts and bolts. They can just watch the videos on their free time.
That's a good thing, because I know a lot of our learners prefer to do it that way. Things are changing there on the training front too. So yeah, very, very good to know. You mentioned something about revenue. And of course, that perked me up. So tell me a little bit about how this works to benefit owners, operators. Like, what's in it for them?
Sure. So there's the old days of EV charging, and then there's the new days of EV charging. The old days, and not to throw a bad word out there, but the industry term is called, they were dumb chargers. You plug this charger into the wall. It had no software, and anyone who would use it would charge their car, that's for sure, but they wouldn't pay. And ownership wasn't recouping any money from it. They were basically just sucking the electricity out of the building to fuel their car, and they were gone. Now, some owners and operators maybe put it that way as an amenity. But now, what was once dumb charging is now called smart charging. And smart charging is everything that we've spoken about. It is utilizing the software to ensure profitability. So these chargers, again, will be able to collect revenue. And we see that from two different angles. If you're an ownership or an operator, you can set it hourly rates, or you can set it by kilowatt hours. So each time, there's preferences on both. Sometimes ownership and operators just like a flat rate, and they just say, it'll be $5 an hour to charge your car. And however long it takes to charge, that's what you pay. And then on the flip side, there's kilowatt charging. So you're charging by the kilowatt hour, and energy changes through the course of the day. The price of electricity changes. So in turn, you can recoup a lot of that electricity that's being dispersed when people are charging. So, you take kilowatt hours. We look at the kilowatt hours on a given state and a given city, and we say, okay, let's look at your utility bill, Mr. Owner Operator. Maybe you're charging, maybe your utility bill is 20 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, you know what? People are going to start to use this as an amenity. And in turn, if you want to charge for them, you should charge X. Maybe you charge 40 cents a kilowatt hour. So that way, one, you've covered your cost of electricity, but two, you've now put a margin on it for providing this amenity. And people will pay because now they know that they have this incredible amenity at the building, and it's serving their lifestyle. It's easy. It's still cheaper than charging up at a supercharger that maybe is on the highway down the road. And they're willing to pay for the convenience and peace of mind. So after all of that, revenue is generated, what the software is ultimately doing is just collecting it all and dispersing it and remitting it back to ownership on either monthly or quarterly basis, doing all the heavy lifting for them. No Excel sheets, no crunching hard numbers, just a click of the button.
Oh, that's great. That's a great explanation of it. And, the other part to that, I think with, the attractiveness of this isn't just all of what we've talked about in terms of revenue, but also about what it's doing for our environment. And I'm sure, as this becomes more and more prevalent, it is already and has been, this is just an excellent solution for an owner operator to really be considering. So any upcoming trends in prop tech or sustainability space that multifamily operators should be aware of or be looking into?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of what I touched upon earlier. You're seeing these really fabulous integrations to make life much easier, for both, ownership operators and tenants. We're seeing the use of AI starting to be deployed to make things much easier. Whether that be AI to help with more customer service aspects to just, for redundancy purposes. We're seeing it in some smart technology that we're deploying right now as it pertains to security. In our industry, unfortunately, there's been a trend where there's been theft. So there's a lot of cord cutting. The physical charging cord is being snipped and in turn is being sold for the copper. So one of the tools that we have recently deployed is an AI security footage. So right now there is a smart camera that resides on a bunch of the pedestals that have the chargers on it. There's smart detection. If someone were to approach the charger, the lights go on. There's even smart detection to know if someone were to actually start to snip, eventually alerting the authorities. So we're seeing the AI trend make its way into EV charging, but also for the better. I think it's really good between that security measures, uptime. You're seeing even these chargers get really smart and talk to each other and know when one car is almost full to start pushing energy to another car who's not nearly as full. So it's been really cool and exciting to see, in that regard, for advanced technology.
Yeah, wow. And even since we talked, a few months back, that is something new that you're just talking about now, because we didn't talk about that before. There wasn't that on the horizon, which only means that we're going to have more coming. We're going to have more change and more advancement, which is, hey, that's great. It's awesome. But I like what you touched on regarding security. And, I had no idea that was a thing. And to know that now and having a solution already built for it is great. So, from your standpoint, from, a leadership standpoint, what's been the biggest learning experience in your career? So more about you, Jeremy. Like, yeah, what's your big highlight moment?
Wow. Great question. I have always been the type where I sincerely like a team. I surround myself with smart people, people who know a lot more than I. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and I'm certainly not afraid to reach out to and rely on those that, have the answer or aren't afraid, to do something, because at the end, um, it is a team effort. We joke, there's no I in switch. So, you know, and that really pertains to, I think, how I, view myself in the team effort. So, heading up the real estate partnerships, working with these developers and owners and operators across the entire country, only benefits my team who are local boots on the ground. So I get a sincere thrill and enjoyment from working with our local teams who are hyper regionalized to help them move the needle in any way. I'm used to having these conversations with these folks. I came from their world before I entered this world. So I just sincerely enjoy helping my team get to where they need to be, because I always put myself in the client's shoes because I was actually in their shoes at one point. So I just get a thrill from just working with the team. It's a herd of buffalo sharing one heart, going in the same direction.
I love this so much. Well, and I think you're pretty inspiring too. I can see that anybody that would be working with you would be, you're uplifting. You've got a lot of great energy. How are you recruiting these days? How are you finding the right fits for your team and for Switch?
Well, first, thank you for the compliment, Suzanne. I sincerely appreciate it. We're always looking for good people. I know people say that all the time, but we genuinely really take our time to make sure it's a right fit. We're not just looking to check a box really quickly and just fill the space. We do a lot of interviewing. We make sure this is the right person. I think what we're finding right now in our space in particular is you're starting to find more tenured professionals. EV charging was once a really new industry, and you have those people who jumped in, super early as an early adopter. And I think over these past, we'll call it 3 to 5 years, you're starting to see a talent pool that has really matured. And whether that's been individuals who have been at a given company for a long time in the EV charging space, or road warriors who have bopped around to a few different EV charging shops. And I think both hold a lot of value. If you've bopped around to a few different EV charging companies, you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. Maybe one was more hardware, maybe one was more software, maybe one was more infrastructure. So that's great. That talent pool brings a wide variety and perspective. And then you have industry veterans who've been so loyal to a lot of these companies who, again, have been in the EV charging space for so long, and maybe it was time for a move. So we really look at both talent pools really seriously because they both offer immense value.
Yeah, and again, from a leadership and insight perspective of what it takes to really get into this business. Can you tell me a little bit about what people need to have if they want to get in? Like, let's say they want to get in those localized markets. How do they find out about you?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get into the industry, I would say you kind of have a few different tools in your tool belt. I think at the end of the day, EV charging, we're trying to get ports out there. We're trying to get stations out there. And sometimes we feel like, maybe we're not going quick enough, so because of the way EV sales are going. So I would say, if you're in sales historically, whether that be in prop tech, climate tech, whatever that may look like for you, solar, battery, infrastructure, you name it, wind, jump in. It's all part of this whole renewable energy cycle, which is a really cool place to play. I think there's just really smart, driven people who actually care in this space. And if EV charging is of interest to you because you're coming from this whole industry, jump in. If you're coming from real estate like myself and you're interested, EV charging is a real estate play. the end of the day. That's where these chargers are going. Commercial, multifamily, mixed use, industrial, you name it. That's the play here. And then if you come from other, parallel industries, we see people come from telecom all the time because of Wi-Fi connectivity and the sort. So, it is a fun industry. I think it's ever evolving. It's still, we think, in its somewhat infancy, but maturing nicely. So I would say take the shot. You got nothing to lose. And it's just so cool to learn just from there's so many different angles of this business. So, how we started this conversation, Suzanne, I never thought I would be in EV charging. And, what I know about electricity now blows my mind.
No, it blows my mind too, Jeremy, quite frankly. So kind of jumping back into the operator head, they want to know more about Switch and, about how to get started with this. How do they really get a hold of you or find you? Where do they start?
Yeah, you can always start the website. The website is super robust. It has a ton of our products and services and offerings and case studies where we have helped hundreds, if not thousands of clients do the same exact thing that they're looking for. At the end of the day, we'll see where those leads are basically coming from, or those of interest, where it's coming from a regionalized perspective, and we'll make sure that the reps in that area reach out to schedule a discovery call. Just see what's going on. What is your property like? What are your needs like? They really take the time to understand because it's consultative. And as we said at the beginning, Suzanne, no two buildings or two portfolios are alike. So our team does a really good job of just understanding the client's needs. And just getting the full team involved, whether that be getting the qualified electricians to go out there to do complimentary site visits. No one wants to have to pay for someone to come out on site. Let them come out on site. Let's put together a roadmap. And then the team will just consult with them and say, here's what we found. Here we believe is the path forward. Does this work for you? And again, you can start small. You don't need to go so big out of the gate. You can always just start with a few chargers. And again, you can always take it from there. So I'm always happy to work with the owners and the operators to see where their assets are located, involve my team, so that way they can get those localized boots on the ground. And then I also just stay really close to it. I want to make sure that they're taken care of too, because there's sometimes a lot of properties, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different states, a lot of different initiatives in those states, just to help and maximize it too. And our team is really equipped on making sure that we can get those available incentives and rebates to offset some of that installation cost, which, putting on my operator hat, that is what everyone wants to know, is how can we offset this CapEx? And how can we do this as efficiently as possible? So we're very fortunate at Switch. We have so many resources, great departments, really smart people.
Jeremy, that was a great way to, I think, segue into the last thing that I would love for you to be able to share. You mentioned case studies. Is there a success story that you could share with our audience where you just knocked it out of the ballpark and really made a difference?
Wow. Oh man, where to begin? I kind of bucket it. I bucket it into the different groups. So for instance, when we go into like a condo environment, you're dealing with HOA or condo boards who are very cost conscious, right? Maybe they don't have a ton of reserves, but they want to add this amenity. We have a case study up on the website where we were able to deploy, it was so many chargers. I don't know, it might've been like 100 chargers for, I don't know. It was so little for the amount that they wanted to do, because we were able to tap into all the available incentives and rebates and help them navigate that. So you have that group of, we'll call it condo HOA, where we're working the incentive programs to get it as cost effective as possible. And then you have these success stories where I love working with developers, because for me, developers, that project is a blank slate. And I recently did a project working with a developer out in Florida where they had 100 parking spots, and they were only interested initially in maybe putting in about 20 chargers. But I know, having worked in the market, that Florida is one of the biggest states that has EV adoption. So I said, you have the opportunity right now to future-proof and you could electrify every single spot if you wanted to right now and put in an EV charger and know that those chargers are there. So that way, as you start to sell out the building, you don't have to think about having to go back in and retrofit. And after having that conversation, the developer saw the writing on the wall, and that went from being 20 chargers to all 100 chargers at the given building, which was really awesome. I really like that. The new developments are great. And then you just have portfolios. You have portfolios of operators who might have been these early adopters with the dumb chargers. And all of a sudden, you start to put in the smart chargers, and now they're seeing this reoccurring revenue stream that they didn't see before. So that within itself is just a case study and just an example of why it should be smart EV charging. Or if you're a developer, take that extra shot, because if you build it, they will come. And you've totally opened the gateway to a new type of resident, one that's eco-conscious, one that already drives an EV, maybe one that has disposable income, one that just genuinely knows that their needs are satisfied. Just like when they plug in their phone at night, they plug in their car at night, because 80% of charging takes place at home. And they want to make it super simple. So these different case studies, well, I didn't give you one. I feel like I needed to hit you with a few different buckets, because each of these groups are thinking about it differently. And it's really cool to see how we help them think about it differently and just see success.
I'm glad that you did give us several examples, because there are several different types of listeners that we have that have their own unique situation. And so that was awesome. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you spending this great time with me, Jeremy. We are at the end of our time together, but just thank you so much. It's been very interesting. I want to revisit this again soon. But one more time, how can they get a hold of you directly? What's the best way?
Best way, if you want, my email address, first name, last name, jeremy.cohen @switchenergy.com. Feel free, shoot me an email. Again, happy to chat it up with you, and then happy to make sure my team members get a hold of you as well. So feel free, reach out. Happy to answer the call.
Love it. And that's Switch without an I.
There's no I in Switch, Suzanne.
Yeah, there's no I in Switch. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Elevated, where we hope that you are inspired and ready to go, elevated to take on your next challenge in multifamily. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course, share with your network. And don't forget that this was brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, that is also sharing the latest and greatest in trends, ideas, and content across our multifamily space. Until next time, keep elevating, and we'll talk soon.